A land of breathtaking beauty, golden beaches, rolling green hills, and rivers sparkling like liquid silver. Yet, beneath this beauty lay scars of history, scars carved by greed, corruption, and human cruelty. When the British carved Sierra Leone into their empire, they planted the seeds of inequality. The colony became a place where freed slaves from across the Atlantic were resettled, creating tensions between the Creole settlers and the indigenous peoples. After independence in 1961, Sierra Leone had a chance to build something new. But instead, decades of corrupt leadership hollowed out the state. The country's lifeblood, its diamonds, became its curse. Instead of funding schools, hospitals, and industries, the diamonds filled the pockets of politicians and businessmen. Villages remained poor, roads broken, and people forgotten. By the 1980s, Sierra Leone's economy had collapsed. Youth wandered without jobs, hungry, angry, and restless. Farmers worked tirelessly, yet reaped nothing. Corruption thrived at the top while despair sank deep at the bottom. Then came the spark. Across the border in Liberia, war was already raging. Charles Taylor's National Patriotic Front of Liberia had unleashed violence and chaos. From the ashes of that war, a new movement was born, one that would cross into Sierra Leone and ignite a storm. In March 1991, a band of rebels calling themselves the Revolutionary United Front, RUF, invaded Sierra Leone. They claimed to fight for justice, to overthrow corrupt leaders, and to free the poor. But their war would soon prove to be something far darker. The first clashes erupted in Kailahun district, deep in Sierra Leone's east. Villagers heard gunfire echo through the forests. Houses burned. Families fled. The rebels attacked with ferocity, killing soldiers, taking hostages, and seizing territory. At first, many believed this rebellion might bring change. But the RUF's true nature soon revealed itself. They did not liberate. They terrorized. Civilians became targets, women suffered unspeakable violence, and children were stolen from their homes to become soldiers. The war had begun. A war that would last 11 years. A war that would leave 50,000 dead. A war that would shock the world. The year was 1992. The Sierra Leone government struggled to contain the rebellion. Its army was weak, poorly equipped, and riddled with corruption. Soldiers often abandoned their posts, leaving entire villages defenseless. Frustrated, a group of young military officers staged a coup. Led by Captain Valentine Strasser, they toppled the old government and took power. Strasser, barely in his 20s, became one of the youngest heads of state in the world. At first, many Sierra Leoneans hoped these young leaders would save the nation. But the war did not end. Instead, it spread like wildfire. The RUF advanced deeper, capturing more land. Their tactics grew more brutal. Villagers were forced to choose between life and mutilation. Rebels lined people up and hacked off their hands, their arms, their legs. The message was clear: vote with your hands, and you will lose them. In towns and villages, people began forming their own militias. Farmers, hunters, and ordinary men armed themselves with machetes, shotguns, and charms they believed would protect them. They called themselves Kamajors, traditional hunters turned defenders of the people, but even with the Kamajors' bravery, the suffering grew. Thousands were forced from their homes, fleeing into refugee camps. Children, once innocent, were dragged into the forests, given guns, and forced to kill, sometimes their own families. By 1995, Sierra Leone was drowning in blood. The diamonds in its soil were no longer treasures, they were weapons, traded for guns and bullets. And the world began to whisper a new phrase: blood diamonds. The RUF's shadow loomed over Sierra Leone. Their dream was to capture Freetown, the capital, the beating heart of the nation. But the government found help in an unexpected place. A South African private military company, Executive Outcomes, was hired to fight back. These mercenaries, seasoned by battles across Africa, brought skill and firepower the Sierra Leonean army lacked. With their help, the government regained key diamond areas. For a moment, hope returned. In 1996, Sierra Leone held elections. Against all odds, amidst war and chaos, the people voted. Ahmad Tejan Kaba became president, a symbol of democracy's survival. But peace was fragile. The RUF refused to stop. In 1997, disaster struck again. A group of soldiers staged another coup, overthrowing Kaba and inviting the RUF to share power. Together, they formed the Armed Forces Revolutionary Council, AFRC. Freetown fell into chaos. Rebels and soldiers roamed the streets. Civilians were slaughtered. Homes burned. Fear consumed the capital. The dream of peace was fading, swallowed by fire. The world could no longer ignore Sierra Leone. West African nations, led by Nigeria, sent ECOMOG, a regional peacekeeping force. They stormed Freetown in 1998, driving out the AFRC and RUF. President Kaba was restored to power. But the war was not over. The rebels regrouped. From the forests, they returned, striking villages, destroying lives. In 1999, a fragile peace deal was signed, the Lomé Peace Agreement. It promised amnesty for rebels, political power sharing, and control of diamonds. But the ink had barely dried before the RUF betrayed it. In May 2000, the RUF shocked the world again. They attacked Freetown and captured hundreds of United Nations peacekeepers. The UN mission, UNAMSIL, was humiliated. It was then that Britain stepped in. Launching Operation Palliser, British troops landed in Sierra Leone. Unlike others, they did not retreat, they did not hesitate. They fought, rescued hostages, and secured Freetown. For the first time in years, Sierra Leoneans felt the tide turning. With British support and UN reinforcement, the government gained ground. The RUF began to fracture. Their grip on the diamond mines slipped. Their leaders grew desperate. Many fighters surrendered, handing over their weapons in disarmament programs. In the villages, survivors emerged with stories of horror, of lost hands, murdered families, and stolen childhoods. Yet, amidst the sorrow, there was resilience. The Kamajors continued their fight, pushing rebels deeper into the forests. International pressure cut off the flow of weapons. Slowly, the RUF collapsed. By 2001, the war machine that once terrorized Sierra Leone was crumbling into dust. In January 2002, President Kaba stood before his people and declared the war over. 50,000 lives had been lost. Millions displaced. Entire generations scarred. But Sierra Leone chose not only to remember the pain, but to seek justice and healing. A Truth and Reconciliation Commission gathered stories from survivors, documenting the crimes, giving voice to the silenced. A special court for Sierra Leone was established, a rare international tribunal that held perpetrators accountable. Among them was Charles Taylor, the Liberian warlord who fueled the chaos. He was eventually tried and sentenced, marking a historic moment of justice in Africa. Sierra Leone began to rebuild. Schools reopened. Markets revived. Hope, though fragile, returned. The diamonds that once fueled war were placed under stricter international control. Yet, the scars remain. Amputees still live with their wounds. Survivors still whisper their nightmares. And Sierra Leone, though moving forward, carries the eternal memory of its darkest years. The war is over. But its lessons endure, that greed can destroy a nation, that children must never again be forced to fight, and that the world must never ignore the cries of the innocent.